So Drew is going to show us around some just some Vue components he's been working on for his for some of his clients. I think I'll just kind of leave it at that. Drew, you want to kind of just take over?
Yeah. Thanks, Cody. Thanks for organizing all of this.
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah. So, well, I guess I'll just start with a little bit of background on like some of you don't know me, but a few of you do. I just wanted to shout out to I don't know if everyone hasn't watched it yet, but John's talk from last meetup on the on slots was awesome. So I actually have been one of the lucky people being able to sort of travel a little bit while this has all been happening. I was in Europe for the last 6 months, and I just got back yesterday. And I was watching John's the YouTube video, Kobe, that you put up of John's presentation while on the plane, I think going between Germany and Croatia or something. And I was like, this is wild. But it was a great talk. So if you want to know about slots, you should totally watch that. It was really, really good. And some of that I'll show you today too.
It was a really good one, and I just want to in general thank both John and Drew are kind of like our main speakers who do this. You know, they practically are swapping off between the two of them each month. So thank you guys so much for continuing to really step up over and over again. And you know, we're always open to other talks too. But thank you guys.
Thanks, Cody. I'm only doing it because John's doing it, so you know, thank him.
I'd much rather be on an airplane flying between Croatia and Berlin.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, my name's for the people who don't know me, my name's Drew Baker. I'm technical director at Funkhaus. We're an LA-based creative agency. We do a lot of things, but where I am responsible for is building websites. So we have a design team that design them, and then I am the head of the technical team. But there's a few other people on this call that work at Funkhaus as well, Austin and Derek as well. So those guys are living and breathing all this sort of stuff as well. We probably build about 2 or 3 websites a month, and we've been doing it for 10 years. It's a long time. We sort of started in the WordPress, PHP, jQuery world and sort of evolved all the way along till now, where we're doing everything with still WordPress as a headless CMS, and then using GraphQL to power a Nuxt front end. And so our stack is Nuxt with Vue components. Obviously, I mean, if anyone's not familiar with Nuxt, it's like a framework for building websites with Vue. It's amazing. I highly recommend it. So what I'm going to show is a bunch of Vue components, but there's a few little Nuxt sugar that goes along with some of these things, which I'll talk about a little bit, but it's all Vue, so it should be familiar to all of you. So these are components that we build for like our internal component libraries, but also used on client websites. So I'll just walk you through some of them. It's probably going to be a little bit confusing because some of it is not necessarily like something you can see, like it's behind the scenes kind of tooling stuff. But I figured it would be interesting for you guys to kind of see what some of the weird stuff that we work with all the time. So that's it. Let me show you some of that now. I'm going to do my little screen share here. Here we go. Cool. Oh. Can you guys all see this? I'll move this over here. Nice. All right. Everyone can see this?
Yeah.
Cool. I'll move this over here maybe. Okay. I just put together a little repo just for links here. So the first one, which is kind of used in a lot of places, is it's a generic image component. So what that looks like.
Can you zoom in a bit, Drew?
Yeah, I have a big screen, so keep reminding me about that. Is this better?
A little more?
Yeah, a bit more. That's
There
good.
we go.
Yeah.
Does that work for everyone?
Yeah.
Great.
Cool. So this is a component that we use all the time. We call it WP image, but it's just a component to build out an image or a video tag. And we use it a lot for like a grid of videos or a grid of images, or even like a slideshow. You know, I think looking at the props will sort of explain what it does. Think of it really as a replacement for just the image tag. But with modern responsive websites, you need to do a lot of different things. Like you need to handle source sets and sizes, attributes, alt text, caption, like all the different things. So rather than just like building out that one image tag all the time, we have this component. If anyone's building Vue websites a lot, you should have a component like this, and you'll do it. And so because it can also be a video, there's some props here that relate just to a video, like a video URL and autoplay and stuff like that. So that's the prop. So I'll show you the markup here. So this is what I'm talking about in terms of just like a generic video, generic image component. But if you give it a video, it'll do that, and it'll use the image that you've given it as a poster. And so, you can imagine in the CMS, you might have a post, and it can either be a video or an image as the thumbnail. And that's kind of what we use this for. It's like, it could be an image or it could be a video. And then we capture some loading events so that we can do things like fade the image in when it's loaded or fade the video in when it's loaded. And so we capture those, and we have methods down below that will handle all those things. The way this works, and I'm going to show you some of it in a minute, is that we've got a generic loaded event, but we want to know if it's an image or a video. And you'll see that a lot of that goes into the classes here. So this is something that we do, we do a lot here, where we try and have our templates have almost no logic in them as much as possible. You'll see some if statements here and there, but the idea is that the if statements also are just going off a computed. So it just makes the templates really thin. Like you ideally don't want your templates to be big. It's like a good red flag to catch yourself if you're finding your templates have lots and lots and lots of stuff going on in them. You want them to be pretty straightforward. So they're all built off computed. This pattern where you set your like an inline style or a class as a computed is really worth doing as well. I'm going to show you why. So if you go through all the props, there's a couple of this is the classes one. So it can have a lot of classes depending on what's happened. There might be some errors, or it has loaded or not loaded, things like that. And so doing this is the way to do that, rather than putting like all of this up in your template. And the same goes for some inline styles like this. This is doing that, but in a different way, where it's building out a styles object, and then sort of depending on different conditionals, it's adding things to that styles object. This is our way of kind of having conditional logic for the inline style. I really try and like do as little as this inline styles as you possibly can. You're better off adding a class and then styling the class rather than an inline style if you can. But this like what's happening here is it's figuring out the aspect ratio of the image, and it needs to be a unique number. So there's only one way to do it. Yeah, so that's that. And then I'll show you like when we capture these events, we're just doing it here. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with this, but this is Vue's way of setting a property on an object while keeping that reactive. Looking at this now, it might actually not needed that there, but yeah.
Can you explain that?
Well, so if you have a deep object or an array and you want that thing to be reactive, like, so this error status here is an object up here in the data, I believe. Yeah, see? And so because this is a deep object, the first level is the only thing that Vue is actually keeping reactive. So it will know if error status changes, but it won't know if video changes. Make sense? So
yep.
If you do Vue.set, you're changing it, but you're letting Vue know that this is going to be reactive. So you either want to reset the entire object, or if you're going to deep set something deep in it, you need to use Vue.set to do it.
And we do that a lot in
like
the
a later-
store when we're overwriting objects there. That's really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting,
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's you know, and then there's a bunch of styles that we use. Sass and looks like this. You know, I said I was going to give some little tips. This is something that we do at Funkhaus, and I really think is a good idea, which is you sort of set your main kind of styles, and obviously you want to do these in the same order that they appear in your markup. And then I kind of like to have like group. This is different, the different modes. Like this can be an intrinsic ratio sizing or full bleed, or there's different sort of modes that this can be in.
Explain what intrinsic mode means.
Yeah, so this is an interesting ratio. So I spelled this wrong, but that's okay. This is a weird trick that to make an image responsive.
Zoom in, please.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if this, I'm not sure if this fully shows what you want to do. I'm going to find you a little, hopefully this works. If we see how that image scales down like this. So this is a responsive image. You can do that using width 100% and height auto. But if you do that, you'll get a flash of unstyled content as the page loads, which hopefully you will. Well, this is probably integrated. So if you inspect what this is doing here. Yeah, he's done it here, see? Width 100%, and I would guess it's getting a height. Anyway, so if you want it to be an image to actually scale and keep its ratio, the best way to do that is to use this sort of CSS trick, which is give it height. If you look at my hands, you give it height 0, and then put padding of the ratio. So then it becomes kind of like this size, and then it will be really responsive from the load. Even if the image never loads, it will take up the right size. So I wasn't prepared to kind of explain what that does, but if you're doing anything with images and you want them to be responsive, you should look at this little trick. Now, I will say that there is a proposal into like to W3C to make a new prop on images that you can use size ratio, I think it's called. I'm not, which will do what I'm just describing, but
yeah, that property hasn't been like fully released yet, right?
No, not yet. No, but it'll be coming. They're solving the same problem. So what that actually looks like in real life is this sizer gets given and here padding bottom, and then aspect padding is this. So it is either the one that I've given it to it, because a lot of times we want to force an image to be 16:9 ratio because a lot of films are made in 16:9. Or it will be height divided by width. So like if that's 9 for a 16:9, that padding will be 56.25, and you times that by 100. So that would be a bottom padding of 56.25%. Anyway.
Perfect.
I don't expect you to follow that, but anyway, that's what's going on there.
The best way I can even kind of try and explain it is like once like that video or image has that sizing, then that class gets added. So it gets handled a certain way.
Yeah.
It's great.
I'm getting code tips from John in Slack, which is great. So John, just the more of those you give me, the better. Some free consulting. Appreciate it. Okay, so anyway, this was an image, and we did like this fig caption. So the new sort of like best practices for SEO of images is a figure. It's that contains an image, and then your caption is a fig caption. So this does all of that for us. And this is open source, this component. So if you want to play around with it, you can get it. I'll post my links all here. Cool. So the next one I'm going to go through is WP SEO. And what that does is it just uses, so Nuxt, if you've ever used Nuxt, it includes a way to set head tags for each page that you're building. And to do that behind the scenes is it uses this plugin called Vue Meta. Zooming in. So this, you can use this in your Vue components. It doesn't have to be Nuxt, but this is built by the Nuxt team and is used in Nuxt. And what that does is allows you to do stuff like this. Set a head tag on the page. And it's really good for like Facebook open graph tags and Google, like site description and things like that. But it's really annoying when you're building a big website to set that on every page that you're building. And then also having to query the data that goes with that every time, so you'll be querying your page data. And then you'll also have to like query data for the head tags, like your featured image, site description, and you want that site description to be like changing depending on what page you're on. So it's really annoying. And so we solve that by building this WP SEO component, which again, doesn't actually render anything. But well, it renders some stuff here. Like I got a little description of it for you here. So what it renders is a H1 tag of the site. So, whatever site you're building. And then I do this as like a little bit of a bit of an SEO hack. I make sure that the first thing on the page, let me show you like what that looks like here. If you can see this, this is a Nuxt project, but this is the default layout. The first thing on the page is always going to be the WP SEO component, which will make sure the first bunch of text that Google sees is what we want it to see, which in this case is computed. I've got some props that you can pass in to kind of override stuff, but by default, it doesn't do this. Now, this is some Nuxt code. So Nuxt includes this sort of custom API called fetch. And what this is a data request that's unique to Nuxt, but it's a Vue component, but they just add this special sort of Nuxt sugar to these components. And so this allows you to do like a call to the server and have it be server-side rendered and everything. And so I just do a GraphQL query here using GraphQL request to get a bunch of generic data from the server. And then I load that data into my prop. Oh, so like local storage, sorry, here. And then we build off a bunch of things off of this data. So we build out the title that we want it to be, so depending on, this is sort of optimized around WordPress or the CMS that we use. We either know it's going to be a title in the case of a page or a post, or if it's like a tag or a category node object, we know it's going to be a name. So we kind of like can fall back, and then if nothing happens, we fall back to the whole generic title of the website. And we sort of just do that for the title, the description, a featured image, and then goes all the way down. And we can watch for a change to the this is Nuxt syntax for like the page you're looking at. So if the whole page changes, we refetch knowing that you're going to get new data for the new page. And then this is the Vue head, the Vue meta sort of syntax to set the head tag. And so what you see is we're setting a bunch of open graph tags here. And then this again, it's a little bit of an SEO hack. I just display none all of this, so there's no output. So what that ended up doing is setting like this site title that you see here gets set correctly, and then Google and Twitter and Facebook will pick up on the right images and stuff like that. And then this is a little syntax that Nuxt wants you to use to not refetch. Like if I went to another page and came back straight away, it won't like do the refetch bit. It'll wait a minute before getting new data. Yeah, so that's the WP SEO component. Again, this is open source too. So if you're building big websites all the time, I think this is a really good idea. I mean, if you're just building one website forever, you just work at a company that's doing just one website and they're working on that all the time, you probably just want to use the Vue meta thing and just do that. But if you're building lots of the same websites over and over again, like we do at Funkhaus, this helped a lot. So that's that. Now we're going to get into ones you can actually see. Okay. This one's a crazy
just
one.
let me pause you for anybody have any questions? All right.
Yeah. So this is a crazy one that you see a lot on like Apple style websites where they're like showing off the iPhone or something and they got scrolling effects going, but not in a parallax sense, if you know what that means, but in like we call it scroll jack. So like you're jacking off the scroll. It's probably inappropriate, but so if you look at this, doesn't look like much. So this is Storybook. This is the Nux Storybook module, which lets you sort of deploy a storybook of all your components. So this is anyone can look at this. Components.funkhaus.us. Zoom in a little bit. But here we go. Okay. Watch what happens when I start scrolling down. Notice I have the scroll bar here. So the browser thinks there's content below this. But as I scroll down, it's actually moving sideways. So what I'm doing is getting the scroll position and translating this sideways. And if I use the like touchpad, I have momentum and stuff like that.
Intentionally?
Yes.
Is it a bug or okay?
No. Yeah. It's supposed to have momentum.
Okay.
It works. The point is it works exactly like a regular scroll. I'm not like faking a scroll event or I have no like overflow hidden and I'm just like moving it based on the mouse. I'm actually listening to a scroll event and moving the content around correctly. So this will work on the advantage of that is it works on all browsers. I don't have to worry about different scroll speeds and different scroll deltas and stuff on phones versus touchpads versus, whatever it might be, the mouse wheel, that kind of stuff. Now, I'll show you how this works, but where it gets tricky is stuff like this. So I have some content above it and I want to scroll down and then capture that, start scrolling sideways. And then when I get to the end of the sideways scroll, unlock and start scrolling down again. All while this works as normal. And I will tell you, this is hard to do, but I'm going to show you how we did it. So that's that. I'll give you an example of how the component is actually used. And if you watch John's slots presentation from last week, you'll see it's just a slot. So this is the sort of wrapping component called carousel scroll jack. And then anything you put inside of it will act as the scrolling elements. So in our case, we'll put a lot of images in there generally. So we'll be scrolling through images, but you could put anything. And we do that using a slot. Doesn't get any props. Now there's a method that you can use. You can reach down into it using a ref. This is some useful syntax if anyone doesn't know it. You can actually, from a parent.
Zoom in here, Drew.
Oh yeah, okay. So this is how you use it. And this is so this is an example, by the way, if anyone hasn't seen it, Storybook Docs, the Docs module. This is just like a markdown file that we go with all of our internal components. And so it serves as like an internal document. Even though there's only 4 developers at Funkhaus, we try and document everything. Just you work on these years ago and you sort of want to know how it all works. But yes, so anyway, here's an example that you can actually, this is just a tip. You can reach down into a component like this. So if you have a page or a nested component, the parent component can reach in and call a method of a child's component. So like it's really useful for videos and stuff because you can like pause and play videos that way rather than like changing a prop from like playing true, false. It's a little bit cumbersome to do that in some scenarios. Like you might want to just like this, for example, is like sort of reset the math like around, like if you added more elements to this component, you might want to like reset it. So that's hard to do with a prop, really. Like you would only, this is the best way to do it. Just have a method that resets it. So I'll show you this now. All right, so source code for that is this. Cool. So we just have the root thing with the class and the style like I showed before. And then this is kind of where all the magic happens. We have a slot. Now we have to wrap everything in the slot so that we can have something to measure, because the slot can be, 30 different items. We want to be able to measure the length of all the items and then take that length and make it the height of the component. So that when I'm scrolling down to the equal length or the equal height to the length. Does that make sense? And that's how we fake. We know that the right distance it has to scroll is this long. So we need to make the height this long. And how we get to work with content above it and below it is we change the element from position relative to position fixed when it gets to the top. I'm using my little window here as like when it gets to the top, we go fixed, and then we move sideways, 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 and when we get to the end, we go unfixed so that it can scroll again. That's how this is working. So you see we have is fixed data here that we capture, and then we translate the thing sideways to the right length. There's a bunch of stuff happening here. So I'll just show you that we're watching S-top, which is the scroll top distance. We watch it and we do some recalculations of how long everything is. Now, this is very inefficient just by the nature of it. Anything that you're doing where you're monitoring a scroll event and trying to figure out the width and the height and everything is always going to be. But it's just the nature of the game. For this kind of work. So we tried hard to do this differently, but it actually works pretty good. So this is another pattern you'll see a lot work we do where we add an event listener on mounted. And then you also want to make sure you remove it on destroyed. JavaScript's got really good with this kind of stuff and knowing when elements have been removed and stuff. So I've actually done a lot of searching to see if this is really sort of necessary in the Vue world. And as far as I can tell, it's not specific that it is, but I do it anyway. This number 8 comes from, you want to run at 60 frames a second. So 1 second divided by 60. And so we're running at 120 frames a second. That's kind of the idea. And we're throttling it here so that you don't go any more than that. This is low-dash throttle. So it's just making sure that you're not running this like more than it needs to, just to try and make it more efficient. Yeah, and so then there's a bunch of logic in here that handles like how long, where we are in the scroll and all this kind of stuff. And see, we're setting here just an inline style like this. And that obviously is sort of updating all the time. And that's how that works. And so this is that method I was talking about where we reach down to reset something. So, if something's changed, you can manually reset it. We don't use this very often. It was just added as a nice feature in case we're like lazy loading in stuff. And then this is all the CSS that goes with it. This is a nice little touch, a little hack, CSS, not hack, but a CSS thing. This makes momentum scrolling work on a phone. So if you change the overflow stuff like what we're doing here on a phone, you'll notice that there's no longer any momentum scrolling anymore. As soon as you stop scrolling, it just stops instantly. This turns that back on. That's why we get a weird WebKit prefix, even though our build tool doesn't include this. Is that a question or?
I am.
Oh, someone's got a live mic.
anything that's useful? Does it look like it's useful to you?
I think so.
Are you talking, Kobe? I'm just hearing someone
I
else
haven't
talk.
started using Vue yet, huh?
No.
Yeah, I'm trying to fix it. 1 sec.
All right. Anyways, and again, this is that little pattern where I try and kind of like group things together. So we have a bunch of states, like is it fixed or is it in scrolling and has it loaded? So we kind of like group those together. By the way, this is CSS, SCSS, SAS, the sort of syntax where you can nest stuff. This is coming to the next kind of version of CSS, where you'll be able to do this like nesting stuff without SAS or less, which I'm very excited for, but it's still in the sort of proposal phase. But yeah, so that's the scroll jack component. Does anyone sort of got any questions about that? It's a lot, I know it's kind of abstract, but nice. Okay, I'll keep going. So the next kind of one that we do is like a drag scroller. So I'm just going to close all these. Drag scroller looks like, oh, I'll open a new window. This is a click to drag, like this. You can see my, can you see my cursor here? I don't know if you can, but I'm clicking and dragging.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. So this is something that we do a lot in terms of for UI components. So we need to be able to click and drag. And again, I want it to kind of like work with the scroll. So I'm now on the trackpad and I'm just moving my mouse side to side. I'm not clicking to drag. So on a phone, I want to be able to just like swipe, but on a mouse, I want to click and drag. So, you know, if you do a lot of Googling on how to do something like this, you'll see a lot of components that sort of fake this by when you click, I translate left and right. And the downside to that is you then can't really have it work naturally on scrolls of phones and things like that. So the better way to do this and how this is done is to have an actual overflowed natural scroll bar situation, hide the scroll bar, and then figure out a way to click and drag and move the scroll position. That's how this works. Now, the final level of it is sometimes I want to link. So, you know, your browser naturally wants to like load a link when you click on it and drag. So I need to like handle a situation where I'm clicking and dragging, and I should be able to do that on a link, but I should be able to like click the link. So this handles that too, where it's smart enough to know that you're dragging, so don't do it. But if I click on it, do it. So I'll show you how we did that in a second. Okay, so here's how this actually looks as a component being used. So we have the drag scroller, and then whatever goes inside it as a slot is like this. And this is just me faking a whole bunch of items. But there's this whole thing is one slot. And it takes a prop, because we built it this way, where you can change how many pixels you have to move the mouse before it thinks it's a click or a drag. And then it gets some sort of classes that get applied to it if you want to style the cursor differently. Like sometimes we use a custom cursor. So we automatically add these, and you could use this in your website to change the cursor. So the code for this is like this. Cool. Not much of a template again, pretty small. Just got a slot with some items in it. I'll show you why. And we have this mouse handler and a click handler. So on mounted, let's see what we have here. No, there's no mounted on this actually, because we're using this and this. So mouse down handler. This is when I click down, it goes like this. So we set our cursor to the grabbing class. This is used to set the class. You can see up here. See, I'm just doing a string literal here to whatever this is set to is going to become a class. So I set that. I sort of capture the left top X, Y, like where my mouse is versus where the scroll position is. And then this resets the distance I've scrolled. Because this is, again, I'm just moused down at this point. And then I bind some events to start listening for when I bring my mouse up or I move my mouse sideways. And so those go on here. So mouse move handler. So I've moving, this becomes true. So I get a class like is moving. So I can have different ones moving. And then this is calculating the distance the X has moved and the distance the Y has moved. I mean, we don't necessarily care about the X or the Y in this scenario, but I'm doing it anyway, just for, I don't know, in case we need it in the future. You could do all this with just the X, Y. And then I capture like how much we've scrolled and I just keep all that stuff. And then because here added the up listener, now I have it here. And I've stopped moving, my cursor's changed, and then I remove the previous handled events here. These ones get removed now just to clean up after myself. Now the handle click one, that is to handle like just a straight click. And I do a check here and a check to see that how far we've moved the cursor. And if we've moved it a certain amount, which by default I think is 7, it's a prop. Default is 10 pixels. If I move them more than 10 pixels, then act like I haven't clicked it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like how you
Works
thought of that.
pretty good. So this is how you sort of like abort from that, prevent default. Yeah. And then a bunch of styles to handle everything like that. This is how you hide the scroll bar. So normally this would have a scroll bar on it. Actually, we can probably just turn that on here. Scroll bar. Oh no, this one, scroll bar. So yeah, this has a scroll bar. So if I click and drag, it's moving the scroll bar around. So scroll bar width, none is a thing I learned that you can actually turn off the scroll bar, which I didn't know you could do until I built this component. So that's how you do that. It's a good little trick. Probably not something you should do all the time. A personal pet peeve of mine is I browse around sites and you see when people manipulate the scroll bar, and trust me, that is a path to madness if you try and like mess with the way the browsers want you to do things. Anytime you're sort of like trying to like fake scroll something, or like another one would be like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like an example of that, but like messing with the scroll or like the mouse wheel, like faking a mouse event and stuff, it's really hard to do. You shouldn't do that. I think you're better off figuring out ways to sort of like play within the way the browser wants you to do stuff than you are to like emulate the browser in some way. Now, having said that, I'm going to just demo you a really SoundLabs. Yeah, check this out. So this is a very top secret Funkhaus website that we haven't gone live with. We're doing it for Adidas's sort of music school called SoundLabs. Maybe it's not working. I'll load. Derek, can you track down that link for me and then Slack it to me?
Yeah.
We're doing some really weird browser.
It's in Netlify?
I think it's in Heroku, but maybe it's Netlify. Just check it out for me. Come back to that. But there's some really weird browser manipulation going on in that one. Cool. So that's the drag scroller one. So this next one is this crazy, lazy grid loading thing. Now, there's no example of this because it's just a tool, but I will show you sort of what it's doing. Cool. So let's say you've got a big list of items, like blog posts, for example, and you want to load the first 10, and then you want to lazy load in the next as you get to the end, like infinite load is a thing you'll see. Now, we've done a lot of that, and it is very tedious to do and very confusing, especially to new developers. And then even more, because you got to kind of like track where you're at. Like one is like when I've come into Vue, so you need some way to know like I've got to the end. So you need to handle that, which the way to do that is intersection observers. That's the new way to do that. So you got to handle that. Then the next thing is like you need to know like what page I'm on. Am I on the first set or the second set or the third set or the fourth set? So you got to track numbers. So it's hard enough sort of doing all that. The final level of that is once you get into the GraphQL world or anywhere that uses cursor-based pagination. So instead of being like I'm on page 2, 3, 4, 5, you end up with these big sort of strings because cursor-based pagination is like way more efficient on the server side. So they're like kind of bookmarks to a point in the database. And it's very confusing at that point because you can't even sort of like understand if I'm on page 2, I'm just on like this random string of characters. So we kind of like struggled with that a long time. And then we ended up being like, you know what, I should build a component that kind of like abstracts all of this and is way easier. And so that's what this is. That's what this is. So this posts is a collection of posts and I can add to those. And as it gets longer, it will push down this. So it might start like this. And then if I add another 10, it'll do this. If I add another 10, it'll do this. So as soon as this lazy loader component comes into Vue, load in the new stuff. And so this is like a really kind of interesting, cool way of using Vue props. So again, like John had this great point in his presentation last month about how, you know, basically everything can be a JSON object. And so you can pass a JSON object, which could be anything. And John used the example, it could even be a whole other component. Or in this case, it can also be a GraphQL document. So that is if everyone's not familiar with GraphQL, a GraphQL document is like a request document that looks like, it's basically what you're asking from the server. So it looks kind of like, well, here's the one from the WP SEO component. So it looks like that, or like here's how you would request a bunch of blog posts. It looks like this. So you can like pass this whole thing. So what we do here is we have a lazy loading component, and the props that are required is I pass in the GraphQL for that next set of items, how many I want, and then I use the sync modifier on a prop. So if anyone is not familiar with that, Vue allows you to, by default, like this, for example, is a one-way sort of prop. So I'm passing number 2 into this prop, into this component. That component can't send number 3 back up, not unless I use sync. So items.sync is saying I'm giving you this post object, and you can update that and send it back to me with new information. So this post comes from here. Well, in this case, actually, post is used here. It's coming from an async data. This is Nuxt. So this is Nuxt has the fetch one I showed you earlier, and also has async data. Sort of the same thing, works slightly differently, but it's setting posts here. This .get is just like a Lodash sort of protection around if this didn't exist. So it's
just to be clear, the sync essentially like it's like a built-in emitter, right? So like if you've passed is that good
it's
to say it?
two-way binding a prop.
Yeah. So instead of just passing in a prop and then explicitly needing to create an emitter to get it back up to the parent, if you do .sync, it automatically, just like two-way binding.
Yeah. So the thing that handles the sending back up bit is the update like this. So if you have .sync on something, and then inside that component, you update whatever that prop name was, so items in this case, it now sort of handles the like sending it back up, you know, and it's a little bit of a sort of circular thing going on because it's like sending it down and then sending it back up and then sending it down. So you don't want to like get this infinite loop, and that's what this does. Yeah. Okay, so what all of that does, let me show you the examples of it all so you kind of see it. This is the, oh, sorry. This is the docs for it all. Oh, lazy loaded docs, here we go.
Drew, before you go to the next thing, can you mentioned something, the interceptor. I wasn't familiar with that.
Intersection observer.
Okay, yeah, okay.
That's a browser API to very efficiently understand when something has come into view or out of view. Used to do that by monitoring the scroll position and then doing a whole bunch of client recs and seeing like, am I in view yet? Am I in view yet? Am I in view yet? It's very, very inefficient. So the new way to do that is called intersection observers. And I'll show you how they work. They're very sort of abstract. Like it's one of those things that you like, this was not built by a front-end engineer. This is built by like browser people. There's some weird stuff to it, but I'll show you how it works. And it, behind the scenes, it's using another thread to keep track of where things are. So it's very efficient. I mean, you won't get like startup, UI stutter or anything like that. Cool.
Thank you.
So this is some examples of how this works. So the basic, yeah, this is the basic one, which is kind of what I showed you. And then I have some custom slots to like handle different like messages as it's loading more and stuff like that. And you can go kind of like real sort of turbo with like a lot of different stuff. This
you want to zoom in a bit?
Yeah, it's probably not going to make a lot of sense to you yet. I'll explain it all in a second. And this is very sort of GraphQL-y heavy. You could totally abstract or change this to work with like a REST API. Okay, so what the code looks like. So it doesn't really do anything other than render like I'm loading or I finished loading, you know, or I've got to the very end, no more to load. So it handles that. But what it does is that all the magic happens here. So on mounted, I've got a protection here because you could, I've allowed you to do different ways of like monitoring if I'm in view or not. Like it's either I've come into view using intersection of there or I clicked load more. So you can like load more, click, load more, click, load more. But if by default, it's an intersection observer. So this is what the syntax looks for an intersection observer, new intersection observer. So you tell it what to do when it does comes into view. There's a lot to this, but root margin is essentially, I don't know if you can see me drawing it. Like if I had root margin 100, 100, 100, it would be like 100 pixels from the edge, you know, 100 pixels from the edge, 100 pixels from the edge, something like that. So we're saying 400 pixels below where I'm at. Like this could be minus 400 and it would be kind of like up here somewhere, 400 pixels, you know, somewhere like that. But if it's 400, it's 400 out of view. So if that becomes 400 pixels below where I'm currently looking, then I've intersected. So that's kind of setting it up. And now it's, once you've set it all up, you tell it, okay, start observing, which is what this is. Again, it's like weird API, but that's how it works. So I'm observing this and now you'll see it should call on intersection. Cool. So it calls on intersection when it happens. Now, because intersection observer can be bound to like 50 different objects, it's going to return, you know, because you can imagine like it's possible to have a lot of things come into view at the exact same moment. So intersection observer returns an array, even if it's just one thing. So you have to kind of like handle that. And it's saying because the intersection can be, it'll fire when it comes into view and it'll fire when it goes out of view. And you can even set it like, I want it to be 10% in view or 100% in view, you know, or 0%, meaning like the second it touches. So you can do all kinds of things with it. But this is saying when I've intersected, so I've come into view, load more. So I run my load more method like this, which is here, load more. So now this is going to get kind of crazy. So now I don't want to do anything if I've got to the end or I'm already currently loading. So I protect that and I abort early. This is a common pattern that we use. So on this is using GraphQL to get the cursor. I wish I had a better example of this, but this is like GraphQL's kind of way of handling like has next, or like there is more to load. It gives you back a cursor to the next set. So which is like a bookmark to where the next set's going to be. So I capture that here, and I try and figure out how many more I kind of want, because I don't want to have to set. I wanted the first. This is a smart little hack to like have less information required to get this to work from the developer. So ordinarily, like I don't want the developer to have to worry that like if by default I'm asking for 20 posts, the next I want it to come in groups of 2, you know. So I don't want to have to be like get 2, but I already have 20. I just want to be able to like kind of know. So what I've done is like I'm asking for 2, but how many do I currently have? So I have 20, so I have 2. So ask for 24 is kind of what happens. Even so, the first request is not very efficient. I'm already asking for a bunch that I have, but then I don't have to worry about, the developer doesn't have to sort of worry. It just kind of works. So that's what's going on there. It's probably a little bit confusing, but like I said, pagination stuff is just inherently kind of like confusing and tracking a lot of like numbers. But so this is again, because I'm in Nuxt, I can do these fetch requests. Although no, actually this is a Vue. This would work not in Nuxt. So this is the Vue component fetching data from the server. It's not Nuxt specific. You can do this in Vue. So this is using GraphQL request, which is just like Axios or even just a regular like browser fetch request. So this is the prop passed in a GraphQL document, which was like, looks kind of like this. So again, this now becomes very generic. Like if you're requesting posts or categories or pages or something else, you just got to give me what you want, and I'll go get it, which is super useful. And then this sets like tells the GraphQL. So again, GraphQL is very sort of typed. So like every GraphQL server has like first, after, like these sort of things. So first is like I want the first 10, or I want the first 20, and I want it after this cursor. So after this bookmark, I want the next 20. So this sort of changes every time it loads more. That's what's happening. This line here is just handling like where to find the next cursor in the GraphQL document. It tries to guess where those are based on like, we just kind of know. You can override that. We'll get to that later. So try to get the new nodes. So first, this is like going to be a path. I'll show you here, see? So this is where, like when GraphQL returns everything, it kind of like returns it in this weird structure of like, here's an array of posts, and then everything inside the post will be like nodes, and then here's everything. I think maybe the best way to show you that is to show you like a little demo of GraphQL. Yeah, here we go. Okay.
Zoom in a bit, please.
Zoom in a bit, yeah.
There you go.
Cool. Oh, so I'm just getting all the posts that are in this. So I don't have any posts. But see, notice how this is returning because I don't have any posts. It returns like this, nodes empty. Now, why it puts the nodes thing in there is because I can ask for page info, cursor, end cursor, and has next, like this. So there is no cursor because there are no next page posts, right? That's what this is doing, is it's trying to figure out where the like nodes are. Now, because GraphQL allows you to like do multiple queries, like I could ask for posts and I could ask for pages at the same time, right? Nodes. See, now I have pages. So my request contains both and pages, and each one has nodes. So like we need to be able to handle, like, are you asking for me to load more pages or more posts from the same document. And so that's what that kind of allowed you to do, is you can say, all right, well, I'm just going to guess that you're just trying to load the first thing that you gave me. So in this case, it would be posts. But if you're actually trying to load pages, you can give me the path to that, which would be, you know, data.pages.nodes. You could pass me that, and then I would try and look for that. And if I can return it like this. So that's kind of handling like different paths to the data you're looking for. And then there's a bunch of like, you know, returns the new ones and updates everything. I do this kind of like neat little trick where I like, how many do I have now? And I want to unique by as a Lodash function to like make sure that I'm giving you back only the new ones, versus like a weird scenario where someone like published a post right as I was like between when I first requested the thing, and then like someone clicks load more and there's like someone made a new post in between. I might like request the same two at the same time. And I don't want to return a double. So I like, to be safe, I like filter them based on the ID, which is like this ID here, which in GraphQL land is like always unique. So I know that those are never going to collide. So that's a nice little sort of just sanity check that we're not returning double data. And then I do the same with the page info. So trying to guess where the next cursor might be. I do the same here, same thing again, just go over, like try and guess where it is, or if not, the developer can provide where it's going to be. And then I just update everything and return, say that loading's finished, and then admit that loading is finished in case like the parent wants to like display some weird loading animation or something that can't be captured in my custom slot. And then very little styles. So that's that. If you're building like trying to solve like lazy loading components, I highly recommend that you build some kind of component like this. So just to recap, like why that is really good, is because it allows the developer now to just do this. Basically be like, here's the new data I want. I want 2 of them, and I'm going to save it to my posts data. And they don't have to worry about anything else. So now we never have to worry about lazy loading data anymore. We just have this. So, it works really good. And then the last one. Oh, well, hang on. I just want to, Derek, did we find that component or that example?
No, I think Stefan has it in his private account. It's not in Heroku. Oh, and it's not set up for SSG. It's not in Netlify.
Oh, okay. Okay. I wonder if I think I might have it here. One second, guys. It's really exciting stuff here. He might not be working yet. Or is it? Here, we'll let that go. Here we go. Look at this. Talking about hijacking. So browser stuff, right? So the whole point of this, and it's still TBD, the whole point of this, let me turn off the sound, was that the concept of this website, actually it's going to work better in Chrome, but because we haven't finished bug testing everything. But the whole point of this website was that Sound Labs, so Adidas's music sort of school, came to us and were like, oh, we put on this thing called Sound Labs. And the whole thing is we take like pros and we partner them up with amateurs and we get them to make music together. And so this whole idea of like weird collaboration. And so we wanted to make a website that had 2 mouse cursors. And so the whole thing is sort of like symmetrical but different. So you can like click on everything with either of the mouses, which is really, really strange.
Super cool, Drew.
So like,
beautiful.
It sort of relies on the design to work where like artists, so one of these cursors is the real cursor and another one is just translated half and is a fake cursor. But the site needs to be built in such a way and designed in such a way that every element exists in 2 places. So like artists and tracks are the same. And if I move my cursor off to the side, it just comes back on the other side. It's very weird. And then you can like click and drag through. This would be playing music, but I'm muted it. And then the slideshow is all like synced to the music and stuff. See, so I skip forward, it skips forward. And I can do some weird stuff. You know, like, so the idea is like this track is called Mountains, but it's by Charlotte Day Wilson, blah, 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 like this. And so, you know, the design works, plays into it a lot. But yeah, this was the most like hijacking the browser that I think you can do. Anyway, that's a one. It's TBD from Funkhaus. All right, last one.
That was really beautiful, Drew. Good job.
Thanks.
Guys.
Yeah, it's a crazy one. Funkhaus doing a good job.
Yeah.
Cool. So this is the last weird one. Again, this isn't much to look at by itself. It's just a slot. So this is how you would use this. So what this does is it kind of, in a hacky way, uses the Instagram private API. So the Instagram that powers the Instagram website, it uses that to pull content out of Instagram for your website. So a lot of the times, like clients come to us and like, oh, we want on our about page or in the footer, we want to have the latest like 10 posts from Instagram, from our own Instagram account. Now that's actually really annoying to do using the official APIs, like going through, like you have to basically make like a fake web app or like a small web app, get it approved and like go through this whole thing just to do this. It's annoying as hell, and Instagram changes their shit all the time. So, and their API and all that stuff. So my advice is don't do that and do something like this, which is basically like reverse engineer the Instagram website and pull data from that just like they do. And lo and behold, Facebook uses GraphQL. So it's just a GraphQL endpoint that once you find where it is, and I'll show you where it is, you can just take all that data and do what you want with it. Now, they do have some sort of like IP detect firewall thing going on. Whereas if you try and like hit their website repeatedly from your server or from the same IP all the time, they'll like ban you temporarily. So you have to do this all client side. So like in theory, like if one client was on like, you know, their own, I don't know, like on their own internal company network that was all coming out of one IP, then this wouldn't work all the time. But in reality, like that's very rare. So this works really well. So how you use it is, this is the component. Now it takes a scoped slot. Again, don't know what it is. Watch John's thing from last month. But we loop, in my case, we loop through images or just give it an image. Because it can also sometimes be a video in Instagram. So sometimes the video, sometimes it's the image. Perfect for WP image. That's why we do that. So you can either give it an image or you can pass in. So where this all happens, let me show you how that works. Cool. So again, not much, because again, most of the websites we build, we're styling them uniquely all the time. So we don't really need to ship it with like a default look. We're styling it all the time. So this is just whatever you've got from Instagram, just listed on the page, and then we'd style it differently. So the slot looks like this, which is going to take, you know, whatever you've given it and loop through it. That's what this is doing here. This is what, so template like this and slot scope is essentially like kind of taking the posts in my slot get given to this template, and I can iterate through them using V4. That's what's happening here. So it emits two things, posts and user data. So it's explained here. So you can get the 12 most recent posts from Instagram pretty easily. You can get the other ones too, but we only ever need the first sort of 12. And then user data is like the profile data from Instagram. So like the guy's name, how many followers they have, like also. It only works for public accounts, but you know, if you're working for a client with it's a company, they're going to be public. So what it does, so again, this is using Nuxt's built-in fetch component. Now you could do this with mounted and then just do your own fetch if you were doing it straight Vue, but Nuxt uses fetch. So prop is a username. So Drew Baker or Funkhaus, whatever the Instagram accounts might be. Yeah, we do a fetch request to this URL. Notice the question mark $_a=1. That is Instagram's. And it looks, wait, you need to, so this is my Instagram account. You need to do this. Yeah, $a=1. So this is my Instagram account. And if you do this, this is Instagram's private API that builds out this page.
Nice.
And this is GraphQL. Well, I mean, it's just JSON, but this is a great GraphQL sort of stuff. So you can see edge and nodes and stuff going here. So at that point, it's pretty easy. You just kind of like pass through the responses to build out what you need. Now, by default, this will only, so what we're doing here is user data. So we're getting IG data GraphQL.user. So IG data GraphQL.user. That's all the user data. So that's my biography, who I'm followed by, all this kind of stuff. Then all my posts go in GraphQL user edge owner to timeline media. So user edge owner to timeline, somewhere in here, edge owner to timeline, edges, then this is data on each image right here. But it doesn't include videos. So you have to do an own request to a video, because the way Instagram works is it loads the images and then switches out images to videos when they're videos, instead of loading all videos. If you looked at my account, even though some of these are videos, that's a video, but it's just an image that loads the video when I click on it. So what I do here is once I've finished loading all of this, I say, go get the videos. And so this goes through all the posts, looks through the Instagram structure, which is a mess. And then if it finds a video, we'll go and request that video. And again, it's the same. You just, I don't know why they call it shortcode. That's what Facebook calls it. But if you just put $A1 on the end of anything, you get like the endpoint for that thing. And so then you can load it. And then, so then I capture that, and just like you see here, I just merge that object into my structure that I'm keeping. And so then I just going to get for that point, you can build whatever you want. So the real takeaway for anyone out there doing this is $$A=1. It's very handy. Now, obviously Instagram could change this anytime they want, but that would mean I'm refactoring Instagram.com. Probably not going to do that a lot. In my experience, I guarantee you Instagram changes their API, their private API, their public, official APIs, more than they change this. We've been, I'm so adamant, we've been so screwed by Facebook changing their APIs with no warning or anything like that. Don't build anything on the Facebook APIs if you can avoid it. That's a hard-earned lesson. Yeah, and that's it. That's all the stuff I was planning on showing. I can show a million more if anyone wants to keep going, but that's it.
Super cool. Hold on, let me
Somewhere.
anybody any questions, anyone?
When is that Adidas stuff going to be live?
It's waiting on them. We're doing a couple of little just fixing it on Firefox and stuff like that. But I mean, there's so many people that need to sign off on something like that. it's got to go through like Adidas the brand, Adidas the music, all the labels, all of the different people involved.
Whose idea was it to do the double mouse thing? Was that from them or was that from you? Or
No, we actually, I hate to admit this, but they came to us and were like, we have no money. It's like, oh, Adidas has no money. Oh, interesting. We have no money, and we want to build a website to go with this, and we're like, okay, well, if you're going to come with us no money, then at least let us do everything and have it be what we think is cool.
right.
So that's 100% was up. And so we went back and pitched them on like 3 different ideas, and then one of them was that was this whole embrace this idea of like collaboration but different. So
Right.
that's what that was. We in terms of weird music players, I don't know if this still works. One of our clients is Mutato, which is the lead singer of Devo, Mark Mothersbaugh. And he's does all the sound, like tons of movie soundtracks, but he's still Devo, so he's total weirdo and awesome. I built this forever ago, and actually, if you go to this, it should be playing music, but maybe it isn't. And you can like scratch the record and do like weird stuff, play the key, and he recorded this, and so we've done a bunch of weird music players and stuff over the years. I had a custom cursor again. This website's from like 10 years ago, maybe. It's an old WordPress site.
It's in Flash, right?
No,
No, I'm kidding.
2012. Built that. So we've done a lot of weird music stuff over the years, but
it's a Monty Python interface.
yeah, exactly.
Questions, anyone?
Good stuff.
Amazing stuff.
This was
It's amazing. My God.
This is a weird directive that we built, Vue directive, to do the intersection observer as a directive. So you can just add a class when this comes into Vue or not. There's a bunch of people that did this. You can just Google Vue directive intersection observer. There's lots of different versions of it. We just wanted to build one that was like the most vanilla version of it. But yeah. This is a cool little thing. I don't know if anyone, whenever you're doing something sort of like cutting edge or weird, like you want to polyfill it. So that's just like filling in bad stuff in a browser. So polyfill is really, really good for that. I don't know if anyone knows what this is. Actually, that's not how we do it anymore. Polyfill.io, I think it is. Yeah, like this. I don't know if everyone knows this, but you can like create like what is the thing you're trying to do. Like I'm trying to use intersection observer. Intersection observer, so I can just build like a polyfill just for intersection observer. So then it just like ships. What's he saying? Disable and remove me from the URL. I think this is being smart because it's trying to load it as in the browser or something. But yeah, you can build out all the different ones you want, filter them by names, like have it run callbacks, all kinds of things. Yeah, no polyfills needed because my current browser doesn't need it, so it doesn't ship it to me, which is really good. And then like the way you actually use that in a Nux project is in your layout. Polyfill. No, sorry. It's package. Here we go. Yeah, see. So this again, this is like Vue Meta, but Nux implementation of it. And so I just like load in a polyfill to allow intersection observer and then smooth scroll to work. And then this flags equals gated is like just feature detect. So don't try and run it if the browser can do it. So that's really handy when you're doing new stuff and you need to support old browsers. Not that there's a polyfill for everything, but it saves you a lot of well, this doesn't work on Internet Explorer 11. Like, okay, well, the 3 dudes that look at your website using that we can solve it like this rather than having to like rebuild everything. Yeah.
All right. Anybody get any questions? Any thoughts? Everyone, why don't you unmute for a sec and
Drew, there's a question in the chat that I think you could
Oh.
answer. How does WordPress GQL compare with 8-base?
Haha, no, good question. Well, they're totally solving different things. Like the 8-base thing is not a CMS. It's just basically a database with GraphQL coming out of it, and then private functions and stuff like Lambda functions. Whereas WordPress is a GraphQL. It's just like a GraphQL output from the WordPress CMS. So you only would be using those 2 things if they're totally different use cases. Like you would not want to use, there's no reason why you would want to use 8-base as a CMS. You should not do that. We just use WordPress as a CMS, and rather than dealing with the WordPress's built-in REST API, I wanted something that was, one, faster, because the REST API of WordPress is really slow. And 2 was, so the GraphQL one is like crazy fast. And 2 was self sort of documenting, like the ability to just to do what I just was showing you before for exploring like what the output is going to be, like this kind of stuff. This graphical stuff is just like a tool set built around GraphQL. Like you could use this graphical thing on any GraphQL powered website. They just happen to build it into the dashboard of WordPress.
There's something like this for Shopify too.
Yeah. And then it's Altia, which is like the desktop install. It's like Postman, but the desktop install one. So this is so powerful for onboarding new developers, because they don't even really need to know WordPress. You can just kind of like read this. This is like the same on all GraphQL. So if you know GraphQL, you can just like figure this out really quickly. So it's really, really good. So
is that a plugin you just installed?
Yeah. So if anyone's interested in the WordPress stuff, we've open sourced all of our WordPress stuff we do. And so we have like a front end and back end stack called Fuxt. So Funkhaus Nuxt. Let me just show that off real quick. So there's 2 parts to that. One is the front end Nuxt boilerplate here. And then this is the WordPress. It's essentially a WordPress theme.
Zoom in a bit.
Yeah, sorry. So this is the Nuxt boilerplate for essentially like just an optimized around we make some assumptions that you're using our own backend, but you could use this without WordPress if you didn't want to. This is the theme that you would install on this into WordPress that has no output other than GraphQL. And then we have some Shopify, like, because Shopify is also GraphQL powered. So we can build like an integrated WordPress powered front end that sits on the same domain as a Shopify. So there's no like shop dot something. So you don't split your SEO stuff. It's all just under one domain using GraphQL. So that's what that bit is over there. But yeah, so the WordPress portion of this is just a PHP WordPress theme that auto installs some plugins and like includes a bunch of stuff like optimizing around headless and making it like, the whole idea of this was to be no code or like low code. You just have to like change a couple of lines, and now you have like this like super powerful GraphQL WordPress API. It uses a plugin to do it that we are sponsors of, and they've like grown way past us now. We were one of the first people to sort of like lean into it, but the guys the lead developers works for Gatsby now, and he's just working on it all the time. So it is the WordPress GraphQL, and he has a bunch of plugins for advanced custom fields. And we, because we use all this, if you do go down that road, you're going to want to install this cause plugin, this WP GraphQL cause. It's a plugin we wrote and used. to allow like a logged in. If you're logged into WordPress, you can see all of your content on the Nuxt front end in previewing. This is built into the Fux theme, but we've made it a separate plugin in case you don't want to use our theme. But if you use our theme, you don't need this, but that's what it does. So previewing works with that. So if you're like, writing a blog post and you try and preview it, it actually works. And you're logged in and it respects it all and it's all private and all that kind of stuff. We also wrote a plugin to search search WP to make it work with GraphQL. So this is like a GraphQL powered of the really advanced WordPress search engine, or like a custom search engine. So if you're thinking about doing WordPress stuff, we've solved all those problems for you. It's kind of frustrating because, not frustrating, but the two-way sort of open source is that one of the biggest sort of users of all our stuff is Wix. It's like, oh, Wix, a like $400 million company. Thanks, guys. Glad we can help. But good on them. So.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Anyone else?
Just want to say this is really, really fantastic.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Thank you, Drew.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Very cool. Very cool.
All right, let me stop sharing my screen.
There we go. Now we can all properly clap. You guys can all unmute yourselves for a sec.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Drew. Nice. Drew, thank you so much. Thanks for doing that.
Anytime. My
Very
pleasure.
cool. All right, team. Kind of just generally wanted to ask about the meetup in general. Does anybody have any specific stuff they're interested in learning about over the next few months? Like, just like trying to get ideas for different talks we could have.
Games.
Games, did you say?
Yeah, games.
Oh, how to build a game?
What's that?
How to build a game? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, games.
Huh.
In Vue. We're developing an educational platform. It's K through 8, and we're using a lot of gamification. That's the new big thing. I'm actually starting a master's program in instructional design, and they're using like the latest techniques in gamification and cognitive science. But this kind of makes me laugh, but because educators are like usually the worst, they're like the biggest Luddites, but they're actually going to teach all these teachers how to code games in Unity. And so with no background, they're saying you don't have to have a background at all. So I'm like, okay, we'll see how that goes. So it's kind of funny, but at any rate, we're really interested. We're building games in Godot, and we even built like a CSS little game and a couple of other things, but we're really interested in seeing the kind of stuff that we could do in Vue. We think that we can. I mean, I'm like the workaround queen. So I would never, when I was laying out like a 700+ page book, I was so busy using layout, I never wanted to go into Photoshop or Illustrator. So I was laying everything out in Quark, and I would just use Quark to like design everything and let's put it in. And everybody thought I did it in the channels in Photoshop, but I actually did it in Quark. And so, but because I was digging in the bowels and like changing everything. But I know, I mean, my son and I are looking at Vue and we like, no, it's like, oh, we could totally do this in Vue. We could totally do that. So I was wondering if there was anybody doing any games, anybody doing any really cool kind of animation graphics kind of stuff doing that.
I don't know if I've seen any I know like a guy that worked for us had built like this incredible, like it was like the game was in Vue. I'll try and find it, but you were a web server. And so you played as a web server and you had to like handle incoming traffic and requests and all this kind of stuff. It was much more like sort of weird text-based kind of one than it was like animated graphics and stuff.
That's cool. We like that.
Yeah.
That's good for Ellie.
There's an amazing version of Tetris that's built in Vue. Some of the first like projects where I just saw them build something really, really beautiful.
Oh, that's great.
Beautify or something like that. It's like a Chinese site. Anyway, look that one up maybe.
What's the Draggable site we were using? Which one's the Draggable? So we were.
She has her son there too.
Yeah. So we were doing some stuff, you know, with Draggable, a lot of Draggable stuff, and we're wondering if it would be a whole lot easier doing it in Vue. What is it?
Shopify.
Yeah,
there's a draggable component that you can use in Vue. Like I use Vue, but there's like a draggable. You can use draggable within Vue.
That I am. Draggable.
The made with Vue.js.
Shopify has this funny, weird.
Everything is easier with Vue.
And they have a bunch of really cool little like graphic stuff, and we basically modified them to use them as this sort of like gamified way of doing exercises on our site. So on our so we did a usability study and it went really well. We have these 5, 6, 7-year-olds doing our site, which is very cool to watch them do stuff. So so that's what we were using, but they're extremely glitchy. And we were thinking that, you know, we were kind of fixing them and tweaking them when we got them to work, but we thought that maybe it would be a whole lot easier in Vue. And I'm thinking that it would be. So again, I'm the workaround queen. So if it's like something can even be close to what we're doing, it's like we can figure it out to make it do what we want. But
I think Drew is saying, was it made with Vue?
Yeah, I'm playing a roguelike sort of 2D, you know, like Super Mario 3 kind of game.
What is it? What is it on?
Made with Vue.
Made.
It's like a site of a bunch of good examples.
Yeah, I'm putting a link to like a pretty crazy game in the Slack right now or in the channel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, this game crazy.
Cool. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? I really am kind of curious of like just things people are interested in learning about. Any particular thing people are focused on that we can just get a sense of kind of what people might be interested in learning about from the rest of the team?
Interested.
I have started learning Next.
Good. Make your life way easier.
Just Shopify.
Nice.
I was gonna mention some like virtual reality things. I think there's like A-frame. I don't know if those can be. I don't think it's like integrated with Vue, but you know it's more JavaScripty stuff. But maybe it can be. There's like some of those. Like there's Vue.js and A-frame JS. I think some of those could be incorporated. I don't know what. It's like augmented reality and VR type things, but it's just a thought.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool things coming out in the future for that.
Cool. Yeah, it's worth definitely looking at. Thanks.
Trying to think of like big things that we need to come up with. I mean, the one thing that's just like plagued me forever is trying to get content out of a CMS, like HTML content, and rendering that like consistently in Vue. And that's like a real problem because anyone can put anything in the editor, you know, so like you end up with script tags and stuff in there. So you're trying to put script tags inside of a script tag because Vue is a whole thing as a script tag. And so it causes all kinds of problems. And so we have a component that we kind of use for that uses Cheerio, which is like a server-side version of jQuery, which is not not what you want to be. There's not words you want to be saying in 2021.
I was gonna say, as soon as a jQuery, you lost me, but keep going.
Yeah, but you know, it's the only way because you're trying to manipulate HTML. So how else do you do it? And so, you know, it's a problem. I'm sort of this close to like changing the editor to be Markdown powered, not HTML powered, so that just to solve problems like that. But yeah, I've been doing a lot. It's not really Vue related. It is Vue related, but just like understanding like abstract syntax trees and like better ways of kind of like structuring data so that it can be consistent. You know, it's kind of like what I liked about Markdown. It's like it's strongly like typed, you know, versus HTML that the whole thing can break if someone who's not very sophisticated like leaves out a comma, you know, or a quotation. Like just trying to explain to like a user the difference between a double quote and a single quote, and using that inside of an attribute in a HTML tag can break the entire website. So that's something I've been really just always been battling with, is how to handle like that kind of use case. And like John covered it in his talk last week about like using VHTML and how like in React it's called like V dangerously use HTML. They don't want you to do it this way. So then how the fuck are you supposed to do it? They just sort of like punt on that, you know? So that's something I've been really struggling with.
Changing subject a little bit, you mentioned React. I heard something, I read like a quick like news snippet about how React was thinking about doing kind of like server-side components. Had anybody read about that?
I'm not sure. I don't pay too much attention to it, but
I happened to catch it, and it reminded me of, I think I'd heard something similar in the Laravel community, that kind of Laravel is doing something similar where they're trying to do some version of like there's like server-side version of Laravel components, which is interesting because I actually know a Vue from the Laravel community. Anyway, just an interesting kind of like almost like something that caught my eye as a subject that like is interesting. If that's another conversation you end up talking a lot more about, that you know, the composition API kind of came out of emulating React's hooks, right? And so who knows if that's becomes a thing now that like Vue needs to, by Vue 5, let's call it, that we have like server-side Vue components.
Well, Nuxt is how maybe I'm not understanding that. How is that different than?
I don't know. I can't.
Because the new version of Nuxt, I don't know if anyone's been like watching the slide presentations and Vue Amsterdam and stuff, but that's gonna do some crazy shit. It's gonna be really good, and it's gonna be that's, you know, they're working on it. I guess it's getting close, but that's gonna be really, really good. I'm curious to see how the composition API, like how mandatory that is.
I've thought about exploring it myself a little bit more and seeing maybe if I give a talk on it. I need to learn it before I can even commit doing a talk on it. But honestly, in my high level understanding of it, the few tutorials I've kind of like looked at, and I'd love it if anybody corrected me if I'm wrong in the way that I'm seeing it. But increasingly, I'm kind of almost seeing it as like, these are like the building blocks that the Vue developers built to create Vue itself. And so you can kind of almost like use like a deconstructed version of Vue. So like, it's nice. Sorry, let me back up and finish that thought. So basically what it seems to me is like, let's say there's something that you like to use, like props. You can use them in a slightly different way than they're used like right now. Like there's a very specific way of like where we see, you know, let's say computed property is a good example. Actually, a computer property is the kind of thing that we very much like associate as being part of a component, right? Mm-hmm. You can basically use those in a much less organized way, like a separate JavaScript file, for example. And again, I'm talking very like roughly. So like the point is, it's almost like it's letting you like take all of the pieces that we think of as Vue and like lay them out on the table and then reassemble them how you want. Yeah. And so if that is correct in the way like I'm understanding it, And that, you know, you need to know a little bit more detail now. You know, if you're rebuilding your own computed property, for example, you kind of feels like you need to, you know, you need to know a little more of like what are the things around it to make it a computed property, right?
Yeah.
But net, if that's the right way to think of it, which I need to explore more, but I feel like that's kind of the way I would describe it, then like it's useful for really obscure stuff if you get to the point where that's a problem. But like just, it's like, I almost think they should call like what we have, like the normal view is like kind of like, just call it like default view. And then like the composition API implies that like you kind of need it. My point is to say that I think like for 99% of the time you don't.
Yeah.
Like it's a nice to have in the event that you need to like do very specific refactorings, which is great. But on balance, I think that it's something that like, you know, it's, you know, I kind of feel like it's most of the time you probably don't need it. So like, let's say you had a search functionality in two different components, right? You could use the composition API might be a nice way.
Yeah.
Very similar, like a mix in, it's just like a nicer way, let's say, or let's call it a trendier way.
Yeah.
Of like, okay, so now you can refactor this into like one separate other file, and then it just calls that file.
Yeah.
That's nice.
It's funny, the composition API is not the thing I'm excited about for Vue 3 at all. There's like a bunch of things that they're doing that are like way more useful. And it's kind of a bummer that the composition API became like the thing to talk about, because yeah, like this teleport stuff that they're doing is like so good.
Describe
the Vue teleport stuff. They're allowing you to like have a component kind of like, so how we're going to use that is like you have a breadcrumb in your header, you know, like I'm on a page and I want to go back to some other page. I have a breadcrumb in the header. That's actually fucking really hard to do. Like to be on an about page and I want the header to have something in it that is related to the about page, but it's a completely different component living in another part of the website. I end up either having to have this big switch statement of like, if I'm on the about page, do this thing, you know, and I hard code in what that thing is, put the word about but if it's dynamic, like a lot of times we're building, you know, like let's say you're building a car website and you've got like BMW, and then I'm in BMW, I've got 3 series and I want the header to say BMW. So that is like this relationship between the page I'm on and these two components knowing where they're being used. And it's really hard to do. And so you end up with like lots of hard-coded logic, or you're committing to the store. So when the about page or the car detail page loads, it tells the rest of the site, hey, you're on the car detail page, put BMW in the header.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah. And you end up with like, it's very difficult to do. And all you're doing that is to like get around this, the HTML wants the word BMW to be in the header, but my page is down here. So Vue, the new version of Vue, and there's some modules you can use now called teleport, which allows the page or the component I'm on to teleport this element, like a div, to this like outlet. So it works kind of like a slot in another part of the website.
That's pretty cool.
It's huge. It's going to be so useful because now, especially in the Nuxt world where you have like my about page template can like output things in all other places of the website, like put it in the breadcrumb slot, put it in the footer slot, you know, put it in my overlay slot or my modal slot. That's something that I'm like, it's going to save us so much work. That's huge.
You're reminding me of, there was a plugin somebody talked about, I can't remember if it was last session or a couple sessions ago. You may have, just because you just watched the video yesterday, where they were talking, there was like some sort of plugin that kind of like, you can kind of like I can't even describe it, like situationally kind of get a sense of where you're at and like pop in. It's kind of like a slot. I don't even know how to describe it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
It might be this. There's a module that you can use called Vue Teleport now, but it's built into the new. Well, I know it's going to be in the new Nuxt because the one that's out now is not server-side rendered, so like it's not great for SEO. But that one's big. And then the web, all the Webpack stuff they've been doing is great. Like sort of removing verbose repetitive code is going to be awesome. The way that, I'm not sure if this has made it into Vue yet, but I know it was an RFC to do it, where you're going to be able to tie a computed or a data, like any kind of computed property, into your template as a CSS var, just using like an easy syntax. So that if I have like a computer that's like blue, that word blue becomes a CSS var that I can use in my styles. So I can link my JavaScript and my style sheet together through CSS vars.
That's pretty cool.
So good for stuff like changing a color or font size increasing. What used to be an inline style will now be able to be a CSS var. So it becomes like way easier to override and all kinds of stuff. And it's awesome. That's going to be that's really good.
I know James on the call right now. I think I feel like he a while back talked about James. You there? You there?
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah. It's at some point. I think you. Like, I mean, this is remembering something from maybe half a year ago. Like you talked about, you know, the ability to kind of pass in a bunch of CSS. You know, like I don't know, kind of like build out the CSS for components, but like it's kind of like a prop. I wonder if like something like that's useful for you.
Oh yeah, no, definitely that would be a great way to leverage this, because right now we're doing inline styles through JS, and it's just I think there's that React component that you can use the styles, and that's kind of the method that I'm currently using myself.
The other big Vue 3 thing, I'll try and find like a link to that CSS thing. But the other big Vue 3 thing is the multiple root element thing. So you can have a component.
Yeah. That's really interesting to me. Like, I mean, it feels like such a weird thing to have been so stuck. I understand technically what the issue was, but it would seem like such a weird thing to me that they were so stuck on in the first place. I mean, I'd have to think that it just like, how hard is it to default wrap every single component with like essentially another div or something that doesn't actually. It seems to me that that's got to be what the solution is, right? So I never understood what was such a big deal in the first place, but glad that it's solved.
Yeah, me too.
Nice. All right, team. Well, it's great to see everyone. What a great showing for what a good start to 2021. I think we had like over 25 people in here at some point, so that's great. So everyone, thank you so much. Drew, thanks again. Well done.
Thank you for listening.
Man, thank you so much for showing off all that cool stuff, and it's all open source too. So we'll share the video, but a lot of it's stuff that he can share.
Some of it isn't. If you need it, just hit me up and I'll show you a back channel to you because you're a Vue supporter.
Anyway, thank you everybody, and Drew, thank you so much, and we'll see you guys all next month.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
Good.
Thanks everyone.
Very cool. Thank
Take
you.
care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.